In a time when time itself stopped showing mercy. In a land where graves became heavier than homes. There was a woman who waited for her child for 6 years. 6 years of prayers. Of exhaustion. Of hope. Of dreaming of a child who would fill the house with laughter. This woman's name is Aya Al-Dahdouh. And this story is not a film. Nor a series. This is a real life. Lived by a Palestinian woman in Gaza. Who lost everything in it. Except one thing, the mandate. Her husband's final words to her before he died, "Be a mountain. Be a mountain, Aya. Do not resent God's will." These words were spoken by Aya Al-Dahdouh to his wife shortly before he succumbed to his injuries. These words were not just a farewell. They were a mandate. A command. A lifeline thrown to a woman who was about to drown in grief. Yasser knew he was leaving. He knew the weight that would fall on her shoulders. And in his last moment of consciousness, he gave her the only weapon she would need to survive, the permission to be unbreakable. Not to be without pain. But to be unmoved by it. Not to deny the loss. But to stand firm despite it. Be a mountain. Aya's emergency labor came 2 months before her due date. But this was not an isolated crisis. It was the culmination of years of physiological and emotional endurance. Layer 1, the foundation. 6 years of waiting for a successful pregnancy. Layer 2, the first fracture. The loss of a twin during early pregnancy. Layer 3, the impact. The loss of a fetus caused by the concussive force of an explosion. Layer 4, the breaking point. February 29, 2024. Premature labor triggered by constant displacement under fire. This is a timeline of compounding grief. Tragedy upon tragedy. Each one building on the last. Each one fracturing her a little more. Yet she stood. The collapse of medical infrastructure dictates the terms of survival. Imagine the scene, a woman on an operating table. Her body torn open. Her womb empty. And the surgeon apologizing because there is not enough anesthetic to numb her pain. "Forgive us, my daughter. The anesthetic is scarce. We can only give you a small dose." The walls of the operating room are perforated by shrapnel. The cold seeps through every hole. No proper lighting. No electricity. No sterile environment. Surgeons hold up their mobile phones to cast light on the wound. And Aya lies there. Silent. Not screaming from the pain. But thinking only of one thing, the child she hasn't held yet. "Forgive us, my daughter." These are the words of a surgeon who has become accustomed to apologizing for things beyond his control. War eliminates the space and time required to heal. Discharged with fresh surgical wounds to make room for the wounded, Aya was separated from her newborn across a fractured geography. Yasser rushed their newborn son Abdul Hadi to Kamal Adwan Hospital in Beit Lahia for emergency incubator care. Meanwhile, Aya underwent emergency surgery at Al-Sahaba Medical Complex in Gaza City. Then she was discharged almost immediately due to mass casualties. Sent to recover in the Tufa neighborhood in East Gaza, while separated from her infant. There is no recovery in war. There is no bed to lie in. No time to heal. No space to grieve. Aya lay in Tufa, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Abdul Hadi in an incubator she couldn't reach. She didn't know. She couldn't know. That she would never hold him alive. The silence of failing generators. On the morning of February 29, 2024, Aya's sister-in-law Ala entered the room quietly. She sat beside Aya, trying to hold back tears. Aya asked, her voice trembling, "Did something happen to Yasser? Or my family?" Ala shook her head. Then whispered, "May God compensate you. Abdul Hadi is gone." Aya froze. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just repeated, "How? How?" The siege on Kamal Adwan Hospital had drained the last drops of fuel. Generators stopped. Oxygen was cut. Abdul Hadi was one of 4 infants who suffocated in the incubators that day. 6 years of waiting. 6 years of prayers. 6 years of hope. Ended because a hospital ran out of fuel. Aya said words that break the heart. 6 years of waiting ends with a fuel outage. That is what hurt me the most. Not the explosion. Not the displacement. Not the pain of surgery without anesthetic. But a fuel outage. Something so small. So preventable. So absurd. The decision to root in shattered ground. After Abdul Hadi's death, Yasser tried to comfort her. He held her hand and said, "God will compensate us, my love. Be patient." But the events did not give them time to grieve. For 5 months, the family fled across multiple neighborhoods in Gaza. Fleeing the bombing. Fleeing death that followed them everywhere. Tufa. Shujaia. Zaytown. Every day a new place. Every place carrying new pain. On the road, they lost 7 members of their extended family. 7 martyrs in separate attacks. They couldn't even bury them all properly. Then came the fateful decision. The whole world was fleeing south. But Aya and Yasser made a different choice. They decided to stay in the north. To return to their home in Zaytown, East Gaza. "We said we will die in our homes, and remain close to our families and our graves." The decision of a man and woman who said, "Enough running. Enough fear. Let us die where we were born. Or live where we loved." They stayed there. Aya, Yasser, and their only remaining child, Motassem. Trying to survive in a besieged city. September 5, 2024. The Fissure. Let us feel what Aya felt under the rubble. Sight, waking to suffocating darkness. Touch, both legs pinned entirely under tons of concrete. Sound, calling for her husband Yasser and son Motassem into the void. Hearing rescuers digging by hand above her. And then. The choice. Hearing civil defense workers debate amputating her legs on the spot to extract her. She was silent. Fully prepared to accept amputation to escape the concrete. Aya herself says, "I was silent. I was ready for anything to get out." Minutes passed like hours. Like days. Like a whole lifetime. Then a rescuer intervened and asked them to try from another direction. After about an hour of digging, they managed to extract her. Without amputation. Despite the fractures and severe laceration in her legs. She came out with her legs. Extracted but shattered. Saved without amputation after an hour of digging, Aya's legs were rebuilt with metal plates and pins at Al-Ali Arab Hospital, also known as the Baptist Hospital. Yasser was pulled out alive. But covered in severe burns. Aya didn't stay long in the hospital. Hospitals were full of wounded. Beds weren't enough. She was discharged to make room for others. But Yasser remained. Suffering from severe burns. And blood poisoning was consuming his body. Aya was transported to him whenever she could. Dragging her broken legs to see him. To hold his hand. To reassure herself about him. In their last conversation before he slipped into a coma. Something happened she didn't expect. Yasser tightened his grip on her hand. Looked at her with eyes melting with pain and love. He said, "Be a mountain, Aya. Do not resent God's will. Aya felt he was saying goodbye. With a voice broken by tears, she replied, "If you want me to be a mountain, stay with me so I can stand." But Yasser slipped into a coma. The unbearable physical weight of grief. Days later, rescue teams managed to recover the body of their son Motasem from under the rubble. They buried him next to his grandfather. Aya went to Yasser in his coma. Whispered in his ear, "They buried him in your father's lap. Motasem is with his grandfather now. Wake up." A single tear fell from Yasser's eye. Just one tear. Then silence. He never woke. On September 15, 2024, Aya's phone rang. It was her brother. He said, in a tone full of pain, "May God accept your husband and give you strength." Aya screamed. She couldn't believe it. Yasser was dead. The man who told her to be a mountain was gone. She screamed into the phone, "Don't bury him until I get there." And there. Despite the metal plates in her legs. Despite wounds that hadn't healed. Despite pain beyond human endurance. Aya dragged her body downstairs. Through streets. Every step reminded her of 10 years of marriage. 10 years of laughter. Of fear. Of love. Of shared dreams. She reached where he was laid. She asked them to put his head in her lap. As he always did in his moments of distress. She ran her hand over his cold face. She asked him in a voice dripping with sorrow, "Who did you leave me to, Yasser?" Then she remembered the mandate. Be a mountain. She wiped her tears with his cold hand. And made a promise. Between herself and herself. In a voice only God could hear, "I will try to be the mountain you asked me to be." Transmuting trauma into purpose. From the rubble to the rescuer. This is the journey. Under the rubble, trapped beneath concrete. Waiting for rescue. Screaming into the darkness to be heard. Above the rubble, standing as a rescuer. Volunteering as an EMT for the Palestinian Red Crescent. Listening intently for the screams of others. After about a year and a half of successive tragedies. After losing 2 children and a husband and relatives. After physical injuries and the effects of displacement. Aya decided to transform her husband's mandate into a life path. She didn't settle for crying over what passed. She didn't settle for sitting in a dark corner waiting for death. She began to rebuild. The empathy loop. It works like this: first, experiencing absolute isolation under the rubble. Then, developing a supreme capacity for empathy. And finally, running toward the wounded to ensure they do not face that isolation alone. Aya explains, "I know the feeling of screaming under the rubble and no one hearing. I know the feeling of running with a wounded person toward the hospital while lost." She continues, "I decided to be close to people in the moments when I was most alone. I may not change the course of the war, but I can change one moment in a human's life. And that is enough for me." This is the empathy loop. From victim to rescuer. From screaming in darkness to listening for screams. From waiting for help to becoming the help. She didn't go far away. She went where the pain is. Where the wounded are. Where those in need are. Because she knows the feeling of loneliness well. Fulfilling the unseen will. A year and a half after surviving the loss of 2 children, a husband, extended family, and her own physical mobility. Aya completed her master's degree at the Islamic University in Gaza. Yasser had registered her for the program before the war. Completing it was not just academic progress. It was a defiant act of loyalty. A way to ensure his vision for her survived. Think about this image: Aya sits in a university hall. Surrounded by books and research papers. her legs still bearing the metal evidence of survival. Every time she turns a page, she remembers the hands that can no longer turn pages. Every time she writes a word, she thinks of the voice that can no longer speak. Yasser had a vision of her, educated, accomplished, standing. And even in death, he made sure that vision would not die. Completing this master's is not just academic achievement. It is a message to death itself: you can take the man. You can take the children. You can break the legs. But you cannot take the mind. You cannot take the will. You cannot take the promise. Be a mountain. And mountains study. Mountains learn. Mountains grow. Redefining the nature of strength. The illusion of strength is defined by the absence of pain or impact. But true resilience is defined by the capacity to stand despite immense loss. On International Women's Day, Aya was asked about strength. She answered with words that deserve to be written in gold: strength does not mean the absence of pain. Strength is when pain exists. But you stand anyway. She said, I may not be able to change the course of the war. True. Aya cannot stop the bombing. Cannot bring back the dead. Cannot change history. But she said, but I can change one thing in one moment. In a human's life. In one moment. She can save a wounded person. Dress a wound. Wipe a tear. Give water to the thirsty. And that is enough for her. A mountain may shake or crack, but it stays standing. And that is what I am trying to be today. The mountain may be shaken by earthquakes. Its rocks may crack. Parts may fall from it. But the true mountain is the one that remains standing. Aya stands today. Perhaps tired. Perhaps cracked. Perhaps carrying in her body metal rods. And in her heart scars that won't heal. But she stands. Because the mandate was, be a mountain. And today she is a mountain that does not break. This story is not fiction. It is not a novel written by a writer. It is the life of a woman named Aya Al-Dahdouh, who lived in Gaza. Saw death with her own eyes. Tasted loss in all its forms. Then decided to stand. Aya did not defeat the war. Because no one defeats war. But she defeated herself. She defeated despair. She defeated the desire for death. Today she completes her masters. Saves the wounded. Teaches the children of Gaza that life is possible. Even under the rubble. Remember this name, Aya Al-Dahdouh. And remember this mandate, be a mountain. Perhaps every one of us, at some moment in our lives, will need to be a mountain. For ourselves. Or for those around us. Peace be upon Aya. And peace be upon every mountain that does not break.